Welcome viewers to Historical Journeys. In Jerusalem, archaeologists uncover a burial chamber accepted to be the resting spot of Jesus Christ. Slicing through stone, the specialists uncover a hole loaded up with residue and garbage. Then, after they gather up hundreds of years of grime, the gathering priests open the grave. The group look at a historic disclosure, and they respond with joy. At the point when archaeologists cleaned away the residue inside Jesus' burial chamber, they made an awe-inspiring disclosure. But before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It only takes a second, and you won't miss any of our future videos. Let's get started. Among the first people to look inside were representatives from the Roman Catholic, Armenian, and Greek Orthodox churches, and they weren't left disappointed. According to the National Geographic archaeologist Frederick Ebert, who contributed to the excavation work, these folks left the site with big grins. Given no one had opened Jesus' tomb for centuries, it's no wonder the group was happy to be a part of this huge event. But what was at stake here? Well, the project was designed and executed by a team of scientists from the National Technical University of Athens. The excavation took place in October 2016 and was part of an effort to restore the sites at Ekil, the chapel-like structure that encloses the tomb. Of course, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre has a very long history that has been damaged, destroyed, and reconstructed over the centuries. And while all this activity has led scholars to doubt the authenticity of the site, the team has discovered firm evidence that resolves the debate once and for all. Is this really the location of Christ's burial place? The excavation certainly falls under the realm of biblical archaeology, a field that aims to find a historical truth of events written about in the Bible. Because the oldest known copies of the Gospels were written approximately 100 years after the death of Christ, the accounts themselves can be considered historically reliable, and this is important when considering Christ's tomb. For example, there's currently no archaeological evidence to say that Jesus was crucified by the Romans, even though most Christians accept this as fact. While the Roman use of crucifixion as capital punishment is well documented in literature, hard evidence of the practice consists of just two human skeletons. One was discovered in 1968, the other in 2018, and neither were the remains of Jesus Christ. But the Church of the Holy Sepulchre does stand near the site where Christ is said to have been crucified. One of the most important pilgrimage destinations in the world, the church lies within the Old City of Jerusalem. This is a district known for its religious monuments, the Dome of the Rock and the Wailing Wall among them. It's a spiritual center for Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike. According to biblical accounts, the site of Christ's execution was Golgotha, the place of skulls. After his death, the story goes, Jesus was laid to rest inside a nearby tomb. Then 3 days later, he supposedly rose from the dead, visited his apostles, and bestowed upon them a sacred mission. They were to deliver the gospel around the world, the so-called good news of spiritual redemption. According to the Bible, responsibility for Christ's dead body fell to a wealthy and elderly Jewish disciple called Joseph of Arimathea. Little is known about Joseph, but some scholars have suggested that he was a great uncle of Christ. Other sources suggested his Christian devotion so enraged the authorities that they eventually arrested him and threw him in prison. After removing Christ from the cross, though, Joseph reportedly carried his body to his family tomb. Carved out of a cave, the tomb was made up of a long burial chamber with niches for holding bodies. According to the scriptures, Joseph swathed Jesus' body in linen, laid it on a burial shelf, and sealed the tomb by rolling a rock over its entrance. Centuries later, in around 325 AD, the Roman Emperor Constantine I sent envoys to find the tomb. The citizens of Jerusalem directed them to a temple commissioned by one of Constantine's predecessors, Emperor Hadrian, and historical sources suggested Hadrian ordered the temple's construction as a symbolic act to both desecrate the Christian shrine and demonstrate the superior might of Roman religion. But Constantine was not a pagan. He was the first Roman emperor to embrace Christianity, so he tore down the Roman temple and excavated the ground beneath it. Then, after locating Jesus' tomb, he had the roof of the cave removed and a Christian church built around it. According to the Roman biographer Eusebius of Caesarea, the first church of the Holy Sepulchre was a lavish construction fit for the King of Kings. Visitors entered via the staircase from the Cardo, Old Jerusalem's principal thoroughfare, and passed through a complex of ornately decorated chambers and a holy garden. The tomb itself was open to the sky. Naturally, it was only a matter of time before the temple was destroyed. This came after the Arabs invaded Jerusalem in 638. These people were initially accepting of the Christian faith, but anti-Christian unrest eventually led to the destruction of the church's dome. In 966, then in 1009, the mad Caliph Fatimid al-Hakim I-Amr Allah, a notorious fanatic, simply obliterated the church. Fortunately, the tomb itself must have remained intact. In the middle of the 12th century, there was a truce, and a new church of the Holy Sepulchre was set to be constructed. In 1077, though, the Seljuk Empire assumed control of Jerusalem and began to abuse the Christian pilgrims. In response, European crusaders set off to the Holy Land with the aim of liberating the church where Jesus was buried. After this, the crusaders restored and renovated the church to give it the form it has today. In the mid-18th century, the city's Ottoman administrators also implemented a novel power-sharing scheme to resolve conflicts between the church's leaders. Sadly, the building was then destroyed by a fire in 1808. Once more, it was reconstructed. Then it was badly shaken by an earthquake in 1927. Throughout it all, stories of the tomb of Jesus Christ remain the one constant. Today, Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox, and Armenian Christians manage the church together, although conflicts occasionally flare up. In 2008, a dispute between Armenian and Greek Orthodox monks even escalated into a physical fight. The church's collective decision-making process also tends to be incredibly slow. It's no wonder Christ's tomb remained closed for so long. There's a ladder near the church entrance that has been the subject of discussion for years. For instance, it's known as the immovable ladder, as it has not budged from its position for more than 2 centuries. And debates about this and the most recent repairs and renovations actually began all the way back in 1959. Speaking to the Daily Mail in 2016, Franciscan monk Athanasius Magarek complained that the renovation was quite restrained. He said, "I personally would have liked to maybe contemplate some alternative to simply restoring the current structure. But because the status quo is so conservative in its nature, we had to more or less accept the fact that there would be no change whatsoever to the current structure. At least there have been successful excavations of the church in the recent past." In the 20th century, researchers made scores of groundbreaking discoveries at the site, including several rock tombs, an ancient limestone quarry pit, and what were thought to be walls from Constantine's first church. But Christ's tomb remained untouched until our team of archaeologists got to work, and scientific analysis would prove that just as believers held the burial slab inside the tomb had last seen the light of day more than 1,600 years ago, the 2016 excavation was, in fact, the first ever to be conducted. Yes, the scientists made a point of measuring the marble slab covering the tomb's burial bed. They also assessed the bed itself and extracted samples from the mortar to date the tomb. A year later, we discovered that the samples obtained were dated to the 4th century. These dating attempts used optically stimulated luminescence, a technique that reveals when quartz crystals last saw light. Despite previous dating attempts that suggested the burial bed was just 1,000 years old, the new dating of the bed's last exposure to light supported the earlier historical accounts of the site. This isn't evidence that Jesus Christ was buried in the tomb, but it is considered by some archaeologists and scholars to be extremely compelling. Some, of course, still hold that the archaeological research shows otherwise. So while the debate continues, both those who practice biblical archaeology and those who don't find ammunition to support their arguments in the historical records uncovered. Some interpretations of the data may have implications beyond religion. You may recall reports from 2013 of ice cores found in Kilimanjaro, East Africa. The ice cores dated to around 1170 BC, about the same time as our historic drought. But what is significant here is that this period of extreme dryness was aligned with the biblical account of drought in the region. These ice cores essentially serve as evidence for a drought that started approximately 4,000 years ago and lasted around 3 centuries. As per the book of Genesis, Joseph, son of Jacob, interpreted a dream for Pharaoh. The dream suggested 7 years of good crops followed by 7 years of famine. And the ice cores provide another piece of data that supports this narrative. Joseph's interpretation of the Pharaoh's dream suggested the Pharaoh's dynasty would enjoy 7 years of good harvests followed by 7 years of famine. This period of time had biblical significance as it would have included the lifetime of the biblical character Joseph, who was known for his coat of many colors and his ability to interpret dreams. Joseph was also the great-grandson of Abraham, who played a significant role in the biblical narrative. According to the story in the book of Genesis, Joseph's interpretation of Pharaoh's dream led to the construction of huge granaries throughout Egypt. The grains stored during the good years were used to feed people during the subsequent famine, which saved countless lives. And the 7 years of famine were consistent with the drought recorded in the Kilimanjaro ice cores. According to research carried out by researchers from the University of Massachusetts, the Hebrew Bible's account of this period could be thought of as an historical novel. It aligns with the factual existence of the drought seen in the ice cores. Thanks for watching. If you want to stay updated with our latest videos, subscribing is the way to go. Just click that red button below and become a part of our channel family.